And my story is very fascinating to me myself. And that is the only thing that I'm trying to do with my teachers.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Great Principles. I am Seema Choria. Today I bring to you another iconic figure from the world of Indian academia. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing, said Albert Einstein. An attentive and observant mind learns more than it is taught. Finding the right person to provide these learning is absolute luck, one would say. Being that person who wants to be provider of such an environment, who respects curiosity and nurtures the spirit of inquiry is a commendable permissive educator. Today on Great Principle, we have one such commendable permissive educator, Dr. Preeti Ojha, Principal, Delhi International School, Dwarka, Delhi. Welcome to Great Principles, ma'am. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Seema.
So, ma'am, let us first know something about you. You know, we all have our once upon a time, and our childhood days, our school days do have an impact on what we choose as an adult. So, you were a coder and find your calling when you started teaching as computer teacher into education. So, we would like to know something about your story of becoming an educator to a school leader.
Thank you. I'm glad and I'm happy you have invited me on this platform. And it's beautiful to narrate your story, but you always want to speak to others. And my story is very fascinating to me myself because everybody in the family used to say that I connect with children very well. And when I talk to them, they used to realize children used to come back to meet me. And most of the time, my mother used to say that now you're 21, 22 years old, and children still keep coming and meeting you. What is that you do with children? So I said, I just listen to them. I think that's more important. I think they want somebody with whom they can talk to, and they want a good listener. So they said, but I see you most of the time speaking. So what makes you to listen to them? So I said, they're so curious with their questions, and I feel very good within that. There are a lot of questions they have, and I have answers to it. But I don't want to let them know all the answers because I want to see to what scope of questioning they want to go ahead with. So I unknowingly found that I was never judgmental with children. There was never a no or a yes to anything they were saying. There was never an expression to let them know that, no, that's not right, or that's wonderful, or that's great. So they used to never see that pendulum of emotion received from me. And when I joined a company as a coder, I realized that with adults, the conditioning is so high that they usually they are not as smiling as children are. They already know all the answers to the questions. They feel there's not much to talk because people may start thinking about them that they are behaving kiddish or childish. So there's no point of talking to them. And most of the time, my face would be not smiling. It was most of the time thinking and reaching to target goals. And each and every member in the company used to keep sitting and looking at each other, no talking, small cabins with one system glued to it, complete our work, go out. I felt like a robot. But when I came home every evening, when I used to sit with children, meet them in the garden, my life used to be very different. And I said, I don't think I'm at the right place. I think I should change a little my profile wherever I can and get that satisfaction of being with children and being happy with them. And the first bell that rang in my mother's mind was that I think nothing better than school. And I think that's the first step that me and my mother did. And I still remember writing my resume with hand directly and leaving on the gate of a school where there was a vacancy on ad hoc. So my mother said, never mind if there's an ad hoc vacancy and maybe you don't like it, you may always leave it, maybe that's not your piece of cake. But there's no point of thinking about it and not joining. So I think you should do what you want to and then give it a try. The most beautiful year of my life, the first year when I joined as a primary teacher. I still remembering their names used to be a task for me. And every day targeting myself, I remember 10 names. Then the next day I used to think I remember 15 names, and then I used to remember 18 names. And I used to feel so fulfilled within that remembering names used to be a task. Making a lesson used to be a task. Finding an assessment process for them used to be a task. And for me, it all came so naturally because as I said from the beginning, it was a connect with children. So most of the time, children sitting around me on the table and discussing, how are you going to assess us? And I used to keep telling them that there's going to be a pen and paper test. They said, but we keep working on the computer. So why are you going to take a pen and paper test? I said, absolutely true. The way that I teach them, I need to assess the same way. And so we started working on different kinds of structures of assessing them on the computer, one to another, second to third format, and curiosity to know them and their curiosity to tell me what exactly they need brought me so closely to school education and the system that it was never like a job to me. It was always like living a day again, living a day again, and moving back to a place where there used to be a lot of ups and downs in schools also. Some of the children not well, sometimes a parent is very angry, sometimes the school structure doesn't need those many number of periods. And there is a problem everywhere where you go and work. But then when you love the work, when you love the way you want to be in an organization where heart says that you want to be here, those problems look very, very small to you. And you feel, okay, fine, I will work on this. But the main agenda is to meet all my children in the classroom. That kind of a thought used to keep propelling me year after year. And I think I changed 4 schools during my working profile. This is the 4th one in which I'm working. And beautiful 3 schools I worked in. Seema, you wouldn't believe the first school that I worked in, that's the school who made me an educator. That's the school who told me that there is a lot of responsibility with children when you work with them. There are different kinds of parents who come and have expectations. So don't try to streamline all of them on the same line and standards. You have to keep talking and understanding who they are and what they expect. The second school was so much around the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, the rituals, the religion, the thought of making children understand what does Gita say, what exactly is the bhav of life. And that was so beautifully nurtured in children that value education was something which was not an effort for a teacher to take as an extra class. It was always in the class with so many examples that groomed me so much that value education cannot be taught to a children by making a textbook and with few question and answers. It's more to do with how you model yourself with that learning of Bhagavad Gita as a teacher. So that when children look at you, when they talk to you, they realize, oh, there is something that she's trying to let us know, and we need to learn from what she has done herself. That kind of a thought process helped me working in one of the schools. The third one was something very close to my heart. I always have been working in a school which was a day school. This was a residential girls' school, very close to my heart in the sense it was not in a city, it was in a village. And that entire school was surrounded with only fields. There was no McDonald's around us. And girls in the residential school were coming from a very humble family. And all of them had a purpose. All of them had dreams. All of them were living in that isolation that tomorrow I'm going to go out of this gate with something in my hand which will make me uplift my life standards, thinking style, and also make me very independent. And the place from where they used to come and to go back was a challenge for me because where they are coming from is not changing, but the girls inside the hostel are changing. So when they will float out in the society again, how are they going to exactly make sure that the change mechanism they take forward with them should be so beautifully taken from them that it does not make them as a struggle? Because that was a challenge which I was going through. And but there were day boarder girls also in that school, and there were about 44 villages that we used to cover with buses. So that was absolutely 24/7 education system in which I was. So in the morning in the school, in the evening in the hostel, staying with the girls in the hostel, looking after them throughout the day, you actually get to know the real child because some of the times you can enact for few hours in school, but you might be different when you're after the school in your home. But when you're in a hostel, you may not be able to do that for very long. You'll be your real self very soon. And so it was also with me. I realized that most of the time there was a lot of effort I used to make with some of the children where I used to feel that these children are wanting something from me, which they thought that I will give them in the school. But during the residential time in the evening, they're expecting little friendliness. I can't be the same with them. But then again in the morning, I used to come to the school office and they used to keep standing and say, "You said that in the evening. You remember?" See, there used to be so much of learning how to keep that thin line all the time intact so that children discipline, responsibility, and accountability stays intact as well as they don't feel homesick so that they can do something in life. So that was the third school that I've worked with. And the fourth one is Delhi International School, a wonderful school where I'm working. Why I'll call it wonderful? Why? Because each and every school in Delhi is as good as my school. So what's that one different thing that one would do to make sure that children and the community is doing what they expect? So the challenge is doing the same thing differently so that the community, parents, children, stakeholders realize that yes, there are so many schools around, but there's one school where you go and you receive something which is different. So to create that difference in a school, Dwarka, believe you me, it's not very easy because you have to think around the learning and the outcome that you have to let the children and the parents receive after a year, which cannot be ignored with knowledge and facts. They want to have a report card, they want to have marks, they have to have a progression. But what do they do after that? Do they have value? Do they have sports? Do they have a different skill? Are they confident? Are they going to do anything in life and become an entrepreneur? So that's the kind of a structure I'm working around, and that's challenging. I love that, and I'm very happy where I am.
You have a beautiful journey, and your journey truly embarks the necessity of teachers, not only as a teacher, in fact, friend, mother, mentor in the life of children. The children look up to the teachers for all these roles, and at times they are, not very friendly with the teachers, those who cannot connect with them. So you rightly said that you need to be connect with the children with open heart, and they teach you a lot. So ma'am is like a person, a very humble person who is ready to learn even from the toddlers, as she mentioned in the beginning of her journey. So today we are here with a very sweet and humble person. Let us know her more in our upcoming questions. So ma'am, my next question to you is, as I mentioned earlier also that you are a multitasking and multi-skilled academician, from coding computer languages to decoding the language of children now. As a naive and impressionable personalities such like children's are, what intrigues you the most?
I think observing, observing them throughout the day is is tiring sometimes, but I love it to the extent that I would like to know what is their need in a non-verbal manner, what they can't express in words, maybe because of the vocabulary, maybe because of the shy thought process, or maybe because they're a little angry or they're not able to express. The best thing that I can do is to observe children and make sure that those children are heard somehow the other. They cannot be ignored just because they don't speak. You have to make sure that they are, with the help of my teachers, with the help of my team, we all are together discussing that how exactly to make those children in the classroom don't speak, to allow them to express. Because as I told you, from the very beginning, many learned people in my life, whoever have come as an educator or a non-educator, have told me that the minute you connect with the children, when you make a friendly association with them, the subject doesn't matter. They will learn it on their own. For example, if I love the teacher and I love the way she is with me in her personal behavior, irrespective of the toughest question she may give me and I'm not able to solve it, I will make sure in the evening I bring the whole family together and allow me to complete that question, because the next day I want to see that teacher with an assurance, hey, she could do it. And if I couldn't, still the child would expect, she will see me with those lenses which will show her my effort rather than only complaining of not completing it. So the minute you start observing children, you get to know, and children are also very smart, by the way, Seema. The minute they get to know, okay, she loves us and she would not say anything, so let me skip another work. Let me not do this. Let me not do this. And, I had a stomach ache, and, I can't come to the school. And there was a huge fight in my house, and I couldn't complete my task. So there's a pattern that you can very beautifully recognize with the way they give you excuses. So the best thing is not to give them that clue that you're understanding, but give them a different way of doing the same thing. And that is the only thing that I'm trying to do with my teachers. My teachers are excellent anywhere in the country. I think teachers are excellent the way they are working today and have been working earlier. But the only thing that I always keep telling them is that try to know your child. Maybe 40 children, you'll take time, you will take 40 days, 50 days, 3 months, but know the child. What kind of the child is? Do they have exam anxiety? So during the exam days, they start taking a leave. Are they the ones who love outside sitting and learning something, and they don't want to learn from a book, but they want to learn from a story, experience, experiment, talking to children? There might be some children who would like to know through peer learning. So observe. And that is what we do when we are very young. But when we grow, we stop observing because we're so observing our own work, our own profile altogether, and the work that we are into. We stop observing the ones who we need to work with. So the minute the children and the teachers start observing each other, I think the whole transaction of knowledge and facts does happen and comes as a learning outcome, but it becomes stronger. It becomes for a long lasting time in the learner's mind intact. So I think that's how I look at it, and I would like to go ahead with.
And you rightly said that one needs to observe a child, the most, because every child is different. And given the scenario where there are so many kids in the school, a teacher needs to know what kind of child he is, what is his individual preferences. And even, ma'am, it is applicable to parents. As the child grows, we are so much into teaching them what we want them to be. We stop observing this also. We
Yes,
often stop observing our own children. So when given the scenario for teachers, it is not an easy task to observe each and every child. It is definitely something, a very biggest trait that teacher needs to have.
yes.
So yes, so ma'am,
Uh,
rightly.
when
Yeah.
we do such kind of a task, what we do is that we have referral forms. So what happens when you get a referral form in your hand with some kinds of columns and headings which you need to fill around the child's personality, behavior, speech, pattern of staying in the classroom? How much ever the teacher doesn't want to or may not do it on the same day, but they have to complete it and give it to us in a particular period of time. So when that happens is the teacher then starts observing, maybe because of that document to be filled, but they start doing it. And that's also enough for the other teacher associations in the school, like the counselor, the class teacher, the coordinator, the HM, the principal. They all get to know a little about the child, and then they start observing the pattern of the child. If it's out of the proportion within a month or 2 months, you then start talking to the parent, because that's essential. The children stay with us for 6 hours. The children stay with the parents for 18 hours. So there's a lot of time when the children are with the parents. So their observation would help us to resolve the issue as soon as possible. Otherwise, it may take a little longer time, but definitely the issue has to be resolved. Until that's not done, the learning would not start in the classroom.
No, absolutely. So there is one more takeaway for the all the schools. If we can't train the teachers to be observant, we can set the process so that it pushes them to catch up all the details that is required. So yes, every school can practice this. They can set up a process, a detailed form wherein teacher is required to fill in the details of the child, and that can also be asked by the parents also to do it. So this would definitely be of great help. So going ahead, ma'am, you are an educationist and a school leader, ma'am. Which aspects of teaching need immediate change to bring a truly inclusive pedagogy?
There are two important things that need to take a change ASAP. One is the teacher's teaching style and her way of conducting a class, maybe online, offline, and the parents' orientation. Both of them, when will be clubbed together, the child would be so nicely groomed that less number of problems would arise. Because what happens is that usually The teacher is teaching and looking after the learning outcome. But how is she going to assess them? It's essential for her to show the progress. So the teaching style should be assessment pattern should be decided in the beginning with the topic.
Right.
And then the learning outcome. How much do you want the child to learn in 30 minutes? And then the more the number of children, the learning outcomes decided by the teacher should be lesser. And how to then reach to the activity related to the same. Usually what happens, the pattern is the activity and the lesson plan decided with the learning outcome later and the assessment in the end. It should take absolutely a turn. And assessment, because that will help the teacher to acknowledge her resources. How much is she competent with the resource through which she wants to assess, as well as what kind of an assessment does she want? If it is a poem, if it is something to do with a story, then oral assessment, vocabularies, a small competition of spell, and various other things can suffice that pattern of assessment. But if it's something to do with the spellings, then writing skill of writing that spelling is important. The phonic, the sound is important. So the children should be then assessed through a method where when they talk, when they speak, the other children can give a peer assessment. And a group of children can then make each other learn through a project. I am trying to say is that this kind of assessment for today's scenario is essential. What happens is we are always dependent on paper pen, MCQ, and the kind of questions we're going to ask. Definitely it's important. But do you think you have all the resources to do that? Do you think that the children will be writing all what you're asking them offline without asking their parents about them? So make the assessment in such a way that it should be an open-ended question, open book test, refer as many books you want to, and then submit me the answer in 1 hour. And the answer that you expect after that should be having number of words required, no plagiarism in it. The content should have a start, middle, and the end, and various other ways in which you can create your assessment pattern so that you're so equipped that 1, 2 assessments will help you to realize the progression of the child. Extremely important. Now, what happens is we take a dictation, we take a oral test, then we take a MCQ, then we take a written test, long answer, short answer. All those patterns are there, but all is happening online. So is the teacher able to take those assessments online the same way as she could have taken in the classroom? We all know what's happening, and children do take advantage of it. And there is a lot of vigilance required for that kind of an assessment. So I think that's essentially important for teacher to have a continuous professional development technically, as well as to do that with what kind of skills we want to develop, a planning for throughout the year. What is the plan that one wants to go ahead to let the children learn? And the second is orientation of the parents. If this is what we are doing, we want a lot of patience with the parents. We want the parents to understand that let's not act and enact like a machine. Let's not do rote learning and complete a task. Let's not only look at the numbers. Let's look at what exactly is the child learning connected to the real life. So for example, if you're talking about water, so is the child understanding how important water is? How will they get it? What is the bill for the consumption of water at home? How exactly is it being used at home? How much quantity of water is used for what kind of work at home? And it is not only for primary, it is also for senior children. Because sometimes what happens, the parabola of learning is so high in the middle and the senior section that they stop realizing the need of these basic things because thinking we've done so much on it in the primary section about the water, about the air, about the noise, that there's a lot of things we're already aware about, but implement it in your social circle. Start using it in your real life practice. See how much is the child, and there the observation will also help. And parents will guide them to do that too. I know so many of them who are so carefully using the plastic bags. They don't use it often. They try to avoid it as much as possible. Children feel very proud by saying, ma'am, I have a cloth bag. And where does that come from? Who tells them that use that cloth bag? You look so good. You're saving the earth. You're reaching to the SDG goals. You're finding all that is important for you as a child. So there, I think orientation of parents on SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, how exactly we can make the child feel secured with what we have at the moment, and how would they need to sustain it in the future. So the way we are using the car today, maybe we will not be able to use it in the future. So let the children know that there will be no cars in the future because of various reasons: the pollution, the resources depletion, the congestion, the society becoming concrete all around. So there will be so many other things that children will not know when they will grow, and they'll say, "Why didn't you tell me when we were young?" So that kind of a question should not arise between the three stakeholders, the parent and student. So I think that is most essential, orienting the parents along with the children, that what are we doing in the school and what we expect from you and what you should expect from us. Both the partners should know each other and work hand in hand.
Right. Ma'am, I really like your creative ideas of assessment. Something teachers need in this time, especially, think out of the box and create every challenge as an opportunity. And when they cannot assess the way they used to in physical classroom, they need to be very creative and come out like the way you explained of peer learning and all those different styles of assessment. And yes, very rightly said again, one more thing that, when you have parents and teachers both working in sync, then only we can create a beautiful future for our children. Yes. So beautifully answered this question. Going ahead, ma'am. Ma'am, you are an inspiration for so many people, and as you just share your beautiful thoughts, so here I would like to know from you, how would you inspire other educationists to follow your ideology of inquiry-based learning?
Always be like a learner. Never try to train your mind or your thoughts that I know everything in the class or in the school, or I have the best idea. The best ideas would come from the minds which are exposed more to the environment outside. So children are more exposed to various kind of information. I see them most of the time on the technology, looking for various kinds of knowledge that they want to gather. And teachers should have that very small ego within them, that I'm not the only one in the classroom for transacting that knowledge. Each child in the class is unique, having some information from a different perspective. It will be an information about weather, but it can be from a child who basically belongs to Kerala, a child who may belong to Rajasthan, a child who may belong to Bihar, a child who may belong to Bombay. So the child may say, "Oh, there is no need of water because there's so much of water in Mumbai. My grandfather keeps talking about so much of rain there." And the child living in a different city may say, "Oh my God, there's no water in my city." So, there can be so many challenging questions that children can come up with where you may not be an expert to answer all of them. You being an expert in one subject of yours, so do not ever feel that you need to know everything. So become a learner. Try to understand that you are also learning with them. Time is changing, generation is changing. You got native learners of technology. They have more questions because they are more informed with various kinds of gadgets around them, and they will be questioning you more than you expecting them to question you. So you need to do similar kind of things what children do. I see so many teachers not playing games. They don't go and surf on the net for various kinds of information. They don't travel much. They're so much glued to their home and their work that they don't travel. Children want to travel, they go out, they go and play, they go and talk to various other people. So their transaction of information from various capacities is higher. Wherein the teacher is in the home, she's reading those conventional books or maybe newspaper, and she's also doing a lot of effort of socializing with some people, but they're not of the age of the children. She should mix up more with children after the school also. She should mix up with more children with different kinds of questions which they may have from their teacher. So she will then reflect, "Oh, that's the kind of a question my student may also have in the class. So why not me to go and travel to various places, read different kinds of books? Why not me to go and watch the similar kind of cartoons that they're watching? Why not I watch the similar kind of movies these children watch? And where is this question coming from?" And then reflect. Are you also moving within? Are you also realizing this is a kind of a question anybody can have? And that will only happen when you keep yourself absolutely unconditioned of the degrees and the experience and your age. Until you don't have that child alive in you, and if you behave also sometimes like a child, it's absolutely fine, because that's your world. There you have to be. And that will help all the teachers to work passionately towards their goals. I think that's how I can see it.
No, ma'am, you just got a very powerful message in your answer. That for all the teachers, it is very, very essential that they need to see the world from the lens of the children. Then they will be able to see the whole new world. They need to come out from their zone and to see altogether the different world and be open to learn. In any profession these days, if you're open to learning, then only you can succeed.
Totally agree, ma'am.
So on this note, we are here again to celebrate the success of Preeti ma'am. She has a plethora of awards and recognitions in her list. Just to mention a few, she is a most progressive principal in National Convention of Edu Leaders. She was awarded as most promising principal by Global Leaders Foundation. She was recognized as LinkedIn Spotlight in 2019. She was awarded as the most innovative leader 2021 by Education Excellence Conclave, which was supported by Ministry of Ayush and Fit India, received the Maharana Pratap Bravery Award by Oxford EduServe, certificate for making it amongst 50 global inspiring women as a change maker by Dr. Varun Gupta, and there are many. If I keep going on, the list will never end. So, ma'am, with such beautiful awards and recognition that you have, what would be your advice to the careerist who wants shortcuts to success? These days people want quick results.
Quick results will not last for a very long time. And then you will feel very lonely and lulled within, because you don't have anything substantial to hold upon. When you work for a target, when you work for a goal, you will, if you're not reaching it as soon as you wanted to, that doesn't mean you're not learning. I feel that when you are working towards your goal and you're failing many times, you're actually learning many times. Every failure has a message which you don't realize at that particular moment, because you feel very low within and you feel, oh my God, I have to restart the whole thing and I have to redo many things, which will take so much of time. But then every time you should change your method of working towards the same goal. So the minute there are two things happening here. One, you are changing your mindset altogether. You're creating a whole mind map which has different kinds of attributes now, and now you're creating a different option for each attribute. So earlier it was only a yes and no. Now it can be yes, no, another idea. So there can be so many other things that you will learn, and you will realize that uh, the shortcut will only leave you with lot of things to achieve in hand, but not for lifelong. So you will have awards in your hand, you will have people know you more, you will have people connecting with you a lot, but then it will not be staying for very long, because they'll get to know, oh, there is something happening here, but it's not happening with the kind of depth we expected. And the shortcuts don't leave you with deep thinking and deep learning. It leaves you with a lot of things that you make up. And as we all know, makeup and made up things don't last for long. So I don't think shortcuts will inspire you to do more in life. It will allow you to stay where you are with few things around you, and that is all.
Absolutely, ma'am, it's rightly said that there are no shortcuts to success. You need to strive for excellence, and which is not gained overnight.
Yes.
Gradually, you develop your brain, and you gradually make yourself more resilient, and that is what makes you a real leader. So on this note, we come to the very interesting segment of the show, which is called Rapid Fire Round, in which we will be taking some fun facts from ma'am, and we'll be making a conversation lighter. So ma'am, you have to answer in one word only, and max one sentence I'll permit you.
Okay.
Right? So here goes first question. Name your favorite book or author.
Chetan Bhagat, author.
All right. What is your leisure time activity? You like music, cooking, trekking? What is it?
Playing sports.
So which sports?
Table tennis.
Table tennis. All right. Do you enjoy cooking?
What I love to cook.
All right. Which is your favorite travel destination?
I love going to jungles, safaris, away from the city. Ranthambore was the latest, which I loved before the lockdown.
All right. Tell us one word that puts you off.
Not possible.
Okay. The last question. Are you a movie buff?
Yes, big one.
All right. So it was really fun knowing you on this end. So now we are coming back to our question session. And ma'am, here we all look up to someone in our tough times to inspire us, to motivate us to do our best. So whom do you look up for inspiration? Which educator do you look up?
There are multiple people who have come in my life as an educator and helped me to groom the way I teach, I conduct myself. But the one I feel very close to my heart is the first mentor of my life. She's the principal of Meera Model School, Miss Sadhna Balla. And one thing I learned from her was keep reading as much as you can, and keep trying to explore what you want to do. Never stand in a long queue waiting for an opportunity to come to you. Every opportunity coming to you, grab it with both your hands and work around it. And keep yourself always looking forward for a purpose in life. I think this so much and endless things I've learned from her, that she's my guru, she's going to be my mentor and always.
Wonderful, ma'am. So this brings to me to the last question of the show, which is also called viewer's choice question. We all learn, we all change. Both are lifelong necessary processes, and everyone is evolving as a person in their lives. So, what is your mantra to be adaptable to new learnings?
Uh, I think the mantra is that everything that you complete, you don't have to take it as a success. That's the, in quotes, I would say that if you have completed to, you think that your journey from a primary teacher to middle school was enough and that's a success. No, success is for me, according to the mantra, which I would like to connect, the process which made you happiest. So when you were working towards becoming a middle school teacher or trying to become a teacher, was that process uplifting you? Was that process making you happy?
Right.
The minute you feel that, yes, you are uh, making yourself happy and the people around you happy with what you're doing, and you are absolutely having a glitter in your eye every day, irrespective of how exhaustive you are, I think that's the mantra of keeping yourself moving ahead with success in your mind. Success should, according to me, it should not be kept in mind with an award or a certificate or a degree. It should be, when I work with these many people and when I reached to this conclusion during that entire process, it was a lovely time I spent. It was so much of learning. I connected more. These are the kind of people I could never talk to, and now I'm talking to. These were the children who were never participating and now are. So I think that's one thing that I look forward for.
So, this is something, we all need to practice this. We all just give up too easily.
Yes.
The exhaustion of the day, we just say, all right, it's fine. This is my limit and I've achieved it. And when you start feeling like this, you just are not open to take up new challenges and keep moving ahead. So again, ma'am has shared something very important for us to cherish. So I think the key takeaways from today's conversation is to nurture, respect, and value the exchange of thoughts. And it was really wonderful to have you, Bam. We truly enjoyed the conversation and a lot of insights for our viewers also. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, vision, and ideas with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seema. It was wonderful talking to you. You may not realize, but when one talks about their journey and when you interact with someone, you reflect so much within that you realize, okay, these are so many other things that one needs to do. So this is a beautiful journey of talking to you throughout these 30 minutes. It was lovely. Thank you so much.